Welcome back. We're gonna go insane. I've been I have been putting off reacting to this theory for a year plus, because it doesn't say, 1 year, 3 months. I didn't look when it comes. We'll find out in a second. And I was going to, theoretically, react to MatPat reacting to it last year to kind of have like a dual commentary. Dual. But then he stops a lot, and it might be a whole thing. So this whole playlist, 21 videos. It's in order of when it released. So technically, this first game theory came out before that theory of things I need to catch up on. I think I've watched before that point. But obviously I'm not going to do a game theory and then there's also other reactions. So we're just going to do the dual process theory reaction and see, because I know FNAF, the channel FNAF, John, he's seen this, MatPat's seen, everyone, this broke FNAF internet last year. So I have water, I have a notebook for notes, I have my Christmas lights for emotional support. I have chocolate also for emotional support. I should take take your meds, kids. Let's fucking go. This came out May 4th, so it is just over a year and a month. Kinda should put it on like time and a half, maybe. Okay.
I said to him, "Oh, well, not every story has to have."
Why? Because why would? Why do we have to start with Mr. Hippo? I have so many questions.
Sometimes a story is just a story. You try to read into every little thing.
Oh God.
Anyone says, you'll just drive yourself crazy. I had a friend do it once.
I don't know if it's loud enough for y'all. Who knows? I never know.
You'll likely end up believing something you shouldn't believe, thinking something you shouldn't think, or assuming something you shouldn't
Help
assume.
Wanted trailer.
You know?
Golden Freddy.
With the release of Help Wanted 2, the new lore introduced in the game raised quite a few more questions than answers. You know, like most
No, that's too fast.
FNAF games. But in the little details of the secret ending, crucial parts of the original timeline were given, ones that we believe can help us solve the overly complicated lore of this game series.
Hi, I'm Corey.
And I'm Connie.
Hi.
And we just solved FNAF.
Bold words for a first video, Corey.
Shut up. I'm aware of what a hefty claim that is.
I like
Ever
them
since
already.
The second game, fans have been scrambling to attempt to piece together the lore. Every installment may solve a few things, but honestly just adds more questions. Do we know everything? No, we'd be dumb to claim that.
Yeah, for instance, we just forgot to put the shadow animatronics here. I don't know what the fuck those are.
Yeah, but only...
Fair, but they did. Okay. They literally just released this 2 days ago. Or yesterday. Was it yesterday? It might have been yesterday. Fucking... Okay.
we uncovered some game-changing details, but revealed long-held fandom beliefs that are, when looking over everything, just plainly not true.
That could mean
I also
anything.
want to clarify something before we start. The point of this video isn't just a FNAF timeline video. Honestly, this video is written around 2 key points and building everything up else around them. You need to understand one before you understand the other, or more
Transcription's
likely, you
great.
need to believe one before you can believe the other. This video's point is to look all the way back, with a clean slate, which is what we did, and start over from the beginning. Get us all on at least a similar, new page, so that we can continue
Good.
theorizing in a way that actually makes progress instead of going in circles.
First,
That's good. And I'm gonna say this a lot because it's just inevitable. I'm gonna say MatPat said, or MatPat thought, it's just, what do you want from me, man? The man talked about the series for 10 years. What do you want from me? But he in the past couple years, he's been more specific in that we're building theories on top of theories on top of theories. And eventually, like, if this theory isn't correct, then this theory can't be, and then the whole thing falls apart. So you have to make sure your foundation of theories
Let's get some disclaimers out of the way.
is solid. Disclaimers, good. Fucking help me. What? Hold on. Everything we say here is indeed our speculation, provided evidence that we believe proves our point, but of course nothing's confirmed. Don't take our word as gospel. Yep. Believe we got something wrong. Totally valid. If you harass us, get fucked, basically. Yep. This is sandbox lore for a funny bear game. Okay. We presume that you know the baseline of FNAF lore. I do. If you don't, it might be confusing, yada yada yada. I'm good. I apologize for that. Was the only way I could get this video shorter than 300 years. Yeah. If we went in order of how the game verse reveals lore, we'd be here until we died. In terms of are the books in continuity debate, we'll use the books as supporting evidence, not primary. Excellent. Because initially Scott was like, oh fuck, what was the phrase he used? He basically said that like you can use them to look at the canon of the games differently, but they are their own separate universe. But then eventually along the lines, they kind of just all seemingly became canon. Which I think is another one of the, yeah, are the FNAF books actually canon? So, you know, I'll get there someday. Just saying this happened because in the books there were Charlie Bots and Fazgoo. And Sea Bunnies. A lot of our theories are our own. So he's quote, yeah, you have to. It's just, you have to. Raito is probably the most. Okay, those ones I haven't seen. I'm mostly stuck with NatPat and then John. FUH, FNAF. And now this. In effort to keep this video less than a week long, may neglect some timer. That's what's later, who we think. Bite of 87, hashtag Mangle was framed. Spelled perceive wrong. Who's counting?
And
Okay.
number 7, we will be cussing in this video.
Let's fucking go.
We're not sorry. Fuck shit.
So, insanely long preamble.
For an insanely long essay, our written form is 50 pages long.
Yeah, that's on you for adding a bibliography. Let's begin.
Okay. Ashton family in the beginning of tragedy.
To begin with, first we must question when exactly Fazbear Entertainment became a corporation. Prior to the release of Security Breach, most fans presumed it began in the 1970s or 80s with the original Fredbear's Family Diner. However, one of the
Right.
collectibles in Security Breach is a poster for the wonderful Fredbear's Singin' Show.
Which sets
The
it
poster is in
way
black and
further
white,
back.
Which doesn't mean a whole lot, considering the first color printer wouldn't work until 1977. So this only places the beginning of Freddy's at before the 80s.
Well.
However, we get other important information. First, the drawing of Fredbear with
Right.
pet eyes, which was a popular style mainly in the 20s to 30s. By the time color became popular in animation, actual eyes could be drawn. So possibly this poster is either from that era or invoking nostalgia for the rubber hose days, which would imply something connecting Fredbear to that time period. But
Yep.
specifically, look at the price on the ticket. 50 cents general admission. When tracking ticket
good old
prices, we
days.
know that adult admission for carnivals jumped up to $1 a ticket by the 1950s. In comparison, many carnival tickets from the 40s, including the 1939 to 40 World's Fair, which was less a carnival and more a showcase, but, you know, important place, sold for 50 cents. If we can narrow down this poster to any time period, we can quickly narrow it down to the 1940s.
Is this important?
No, I just have friends that like dating things.
I
Ew.
personally think the brand, being as old as the 40s, is unlikely that it may be older than Henry and William themselves. Maybe it's just a 30-year cycle thing. Nevertheless, we know at the very least that Fredbear's Family Diner began in the 1970s or early 1980s.
Just bought the rights to
Fest,
it.
which seems to be connected to Freddy's.
Oh. Yeah, this fucking idea. Fall Fest is a whole thing. Which I know we have to get more into, and I'm sure they will, and I know one of the theories, that first theory actually that I was talking about that came up before this, is about Fall Fest.
Has a poster for 1970
That's
Help
it.
Wanted 2, which
Help Wanted
could say
2
that
fucked us all
Fazbear
up.
as an idea or corporation
I don't remember where it was. One of those memories from when I was a little kid. This is from the books, which I have. This is from FNAF 4. Yeah, Spring Bonnie. Fucking this little shit. Okay.
started around then, but nevertheless, we know at the very least that Fredbear's Family Diner began in the 1970s or early 1980s. The main time we see it is in 1983, where it seems to be an established restaurant. Here's where we enter speculation on the owners of the restaurant. We know for a fact that the co-owners of the restaurants, at the time of the missing children incident, were William Afton and Henry. They don't seem to be full owners of the franchise, which has a company behind it, but whether they started the franchise and
So we're
sold it, and they
seeing-
joined the company.
Right off the bat, we're setting Henry as Orange Guy. which would be a whole. We'll see where they go. We'll see.
To open restaurants is up to interpretation.
Also note, Henry and Charlotte's last name may not be Emily.
Yeah, we don't
as
know.
The name was found on her grave in the Silver Eyes, and, well, it could have easily been a middle name.
Right, we've
In
just
the
been
Ultimate
running with
Guide,
it.
She's referred to as Charlotte Emily, but he's just referred to as Henry, implying it may not be a shared name.
Yeah.
But it does exist as a surname and does mean rival, so that's what we got for now. William Afton seems to have been the one running Fredbear's, which worked out because
It meaning rivals. Interesting.
his family lived walking distance from the building. It is very likely
Okay, here's the thing though. I can't think this fast. Okay.
one running Fredbear's, which worked out because his family lived walking distance from the building.
Right.
It is very likely that their sister location, Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, was also open around the same time as Fredbear's, possibly falling under Henry's jurisdiction.
A lot
We
of
know
fan
this due to
games
the
have done that.
existence of Chica and Foxy toys, merchandise, and television appearances during FNAF 4, despite them not appearing at Fredbear's. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 also references a sister location that was open at the same time as Freddy's, which seems to have closed due to spring lock failures.
Yep.
After learning of an unfortunate incident at the sister location involving multiple and simultaneous spring lock failures, the company has deemed the suit temporarily unfit for employees.
We know
Hi. The FNAF 3 tapes have always been interesting to me.
for a fact that the main four characters had at least been established by that point. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy. Fredbear and Spring Bonnie were also established and merchandised with the others, as we see separate Fredbear and Freddy plushies in the crying child's room, and a little kid with a Spring Bonnie finger trap in the cutscenes,
Yep.
who could be Charlie? That's not important.
No matter when Fredbear's was established, we know that the Freddy Fazbear specific brand began in 1983.
Yep.
Due to novelty coins you can find, so there's
Fast tokens.
that.
While William seems to have handled mainly business and entertainment, Henry, meanwhile, is confirmed to have been the technician within the franchise,
Right.
as he later refers to the suits as my creations.
This is supported in the Silver Eyes, in which Henry is stated to be the creator of all Freddy's suits.
Including both the endo and exoskeletons, as well as the Springlock variant.
Which again is in the books, so theoretically not canon. Because fuck us, I guess. I'm gonna have to pause and like reread things. Yep. All of the Freddy endos and the exos, which we have so many of, and the springlocks. Okay.
The Springlock suits, as any FNAF fan will tell you, are very important to understand.
Boy
In
howdy.
creating the animatronics for their restaurants, William and Henry decided to create suits that could function as both animatronics and
And
costumes. Ones that could perform on stage with robotic movements, but could also be worn as outfits to mingle safely with guests. Thus,
And nothing went wrong ever.
the Springlock suits. With a hand crank, the inner machinery was wound back and held against the edges of the suit with the Springlock mechanisms, leaving room for a human to fit inside.
Unfortunately, however, the Springlocks were
Delicate.
unreliable, to say the
That too.
least. Any wrong movement or introduction of fluids such as spilled water, tears, or blood
And, you know, the fluid around toddlers kind of just happens, man. It's just, they're gross.
and the spring locks would set off, sending the endoskeleton back into place, whether or not someone was still inside. This would cause an intense and painful death. While the instructions tell the employees to find somewhere quiet to bleed out, it's
Yep.
actually more likely that the suits would cause more internal than external bleeding. The pieces would still be in place, holding most of the blood in. However, its piercing of vital
I guess, tactically, you could say that. Unclear. Like if it all clamped on you and then stayed there, technically it would, yeah. I wouldn't call it internal bleeding. I would just call it blood that can't get out. I guess that's tactically.
organs and arteries could not be understated. It would be a long and painful death.
Yeah, boy.
And the owners knew this. As stated previously, it was in the instructions to find a safe place to bleed out rather than frighten guests.
They had a whole room
In the
for it.
Silver Eyes, there is a given possibility of surviving a
Oy.
spring locking, as William is stated to have done so, but
Yup.
there isn't any mention of this in the game's universe. I suppose it could be possible if medical attention was received, but that would require the employee to be found and rescued in a reasonable time frame. Something that would be hard if they went to the back rooms.
Those
different.
back rooms are
I fully expected them to make a backrooms joke.
also important. In the instructions, the
Excellent.
safe place to bleed out was noted as the hidden back room in the establishment.
Safe room.
Each Freddy's location was given a secret room.
It's not
accessible
on
to
the fucking
employees,
maps.
but hidden from all maps and inaccessible to free-roaming animatronics. These rooms are where the murders are going to take place. And where Spring
Oh. Yeah. I mean, we knew that, but that makes sense with why they get the error code in that minigame. That never clicked before.
Trap will be stuck for a long while, so it's also important to keep them in mind.
A lot of this is pretty dangerous, honestly.
The back rooms were
No.
supposedly made for staff breaks, but anyone could see why a hidden room off map would be a dangerous thing to make. And the spring locks? Damn.
I think here we should really just consider that William and Henry were adrenaline junkies. Or at the very least, a bit careless with safety until later events.
Yeah, until all their kids were the ones getting kills.
I mean, it was the 80s.
It was the 80s.
Yeah, we all know how safe everyone was being then.
Do you know where your kids are?
When it's hot out, this is a great place to spend the day with your family.
Now, we've discussed
people have
Fredbear's
died
and
at
the
Six
likelihood
Flags.
of Freddy's being open at the same time. The other important thing to understand about the co-owners at this point
Here
is
we
their
go.
families, namely their children.
What do we got?
If either had a wife, they're not mentioned or important.
Right. I'm trying to think how true that is. I mean, except for the it's on the Patient 46 tapes, or was it Vanessa's tapes in the security breach FNAF 4 room? No, sister location room. Yeah, the sister location room. Where Michael watches TV in the sister location. What we think is Michael. It's a whole thing. What was I saying? Don't remember. Excellent.
Namely their children. If I
Right, the wife. Yeah, on the secret tapes and security breach, one of them gets mentioned like a you lied in the custody hearing. Was that on Vanessa's? Security breach. Secret tapes. Retro CDs, yes. Okay, please hold. I was in Vanessa's. Yeah, like, I feel like I get to know you. I feel like I know your dad too. Bill, right? Your dad's name is Bill. Yada yada yada. She mumbles. Your supervisor notes that you follow instructions perfectly. Is Vanessa an animatronic? Your dad made you follow instructions, didn't he? I'm talking about the custody battle between your mom and your dad. Your dad didn't play it fair, did he? He used to make your mom look bad in court. And then the therapist says, I know your mom, and then it cuts out after she lost the custody case. We all kind of just assumed it meant the mom committed suicide. I think that's pretty much as much as we ever have a mention of a wife.
either had a wife, they're not mentioned or important. Mrs. Emily gets a few mentions in the Silver Eyes as having left following Charlie's death, but
I have to type
Mrs.
so many
Emily
words.
gets a few mentions in the Silver Eyes as having
It's brunette, yeah.
left following Charlie's death, but no narrative significance outside of that. Mrs. Afton is only implied to exist in Security Breach and only vaguely.
Right, the
Henry
table.
Emily's kid is easy. Her name is Charlotte Emily, referred to as Charlie in the novels. The novels also reference a twin named Sammy, but like Mrs. Emily, he has no lore relevance outside of being a retconned red herring as to who Henry's dead kid is,
Yep.
and there isn't a single implication of his existence in any other universe.
Yep.
The novels also give Charlotte's age, though it's inconsistent by book. In the first book, she states she was 7 in 1985, which would put her birth at 1978. The Fourth Closet's gravestone puts her birth in 1980 and her death in 1983. The poppet for Charlie in Help Wanted 2 is also unlocked via a 1983 code, although that may not be a reference to her death year and may just be a reference to the original sister location Easter egg.
Right.
Either way, we know that at the time of her death, she was incredibly young.
Right, so I mean, technically they can both be correct if one was the real death, like kid's lifespan, and then one was like the first robot.
Afton tends to grab kids that are under 10 years old. And Afton's got his own family, too.
William Afton has 3 known children, Michael, Elizabeth, and the third one, who is known in the fan base as the Crying Child.
Little shit.
Now, I'm gonna be real.
Let's see what they say. Someone came up with like a way to make it Evan. That's kind of loosely what people have been running with, but
We believe we have been told the Crying Child's name, and once we get to
Not
that part
Evan.
of the video, we will
'Kay.
refer to them as such.
Interesting.
When we get there, though, we'll be initializing him as CC.
Great.
Michael is definitely the oldest and seems to be in his tweens or early teens by around FNAF 4, which would place his birth around 1970.
As for the other two, we don't have specific years or ages. However, I do believe that CC is actually older than Elizabeth,
Oh?
contrary to fandom belief. The only hint towards her existence
Right.
in FNAF
I mean, if they were like expecting, like if she wasn't born yet and the room was just ready, it'd be like a cot probably, but
4 is when you can walk into a room
And a
upon
toy.
which her only toy is a broken mangle. FNAF 2 states that Mangle was created with toddlers in mind, and the toddlers are the ones who take him apart, which implies to me that Elizabeth is a toddler in 1983.
that's solid. That's clever.
This would explain her absence from the plot. She's at daycare or with her parent or parents, or simply too young to be participating in any events.
Fair.
Another long debate in the fan base
She's probably underground with William in the sister location basement. Okay.
is which child died first. We know Michael died last.
Yeah, because she was with. She probably just went with William a lot because that's how she died. She wasn't supposed to go see baby. She went and saw baby. Baby ate her. Though there were children there, so the place was open. So it's not like she was like William was just keeping an eye on her while he made the. Anyway.
last, but the other 3 are up in the air.
Yeah.
To be honest, it seems very likely that of the 3 left, Charlie, Cece, Elizabeth died last. Firstly, because, as mentioned, she was likely a toddler in
Right.
1983 and would need to age up a little more. We also know for certain, due to the blueprints of the Fun Times, that each robot was made with child luring and kidnapping in mind.
Sure
And the
was.
scooper was made to remove remnant, which Afton would have no idea about until he started experimenting with possession.
Right. AKA after children have started to die, AKA after the animatronics have been possessed initially.
This puts Elizabeth solidly behind the other 2.
Yeah.
As for Charlie and CC, it's been debated on whether Charlie was killed in William's grief over CC, or if CC was
Yeah.
traumatized by Charlie's death. I believe that in Help
Let's see what they say.
Wanted 2 and FNAF 6, we are given the information that CC dies first.
Okay, interesting. Because I was going to say, I mean, in pretty much the entirety of the planet of FNAF, there is Charlie's first. Because she is the puppet. Right? Is crying child? I don't know, it's been a while. I mean, obviously it would make sense with the crying of the mask, but give gifts, give life is the puppet giving the initial possession ability, we think, to the animatronics for the first round of dead kids. I mean, I guess I don't know. We'll see. Let's see what they say. They have evidence.
The Help Wanted 2 information we'll get to when we get to it.
Yeah.
But as for FNAF 6,
Midnight Motorist is a very controversial minigame.
Oh?
But with multiple clues pointing to it, it really seems like this is about William Afton.
His change in color is likely to differentiate him from the previous game's Michael sprite. At the time of Sister Location's release,
Okay.
confusion on whether Michael was the purple guy or just a purple guy was at an all-time high.
Okay, so not Henry as orange guy like they had in their graphic. Sorry. Okay.
Or it could be because a purple sprite just wouldn't look good against a black background.
True.
The secret minigame featured within Midnight Motorist is labeled in the files as Later That Night.
Sure is.
Considering the look of the car and the rain texture, it's very, very likely to be
Yep.
referring to Charlotte's death.
Yep.
It's later on the night Charlotte died, after William drove away, but while it was still raining.
The story shows him drunk driving to a place called Junior's that won't let him in. Likely a bar that's keeping him from getting more drunk.
What the fuck is this? Other overlay.
The biggest proof of this is the guy
Someone
standing
was smoking a
outside,
cigarette.
taking him out. Pretty likely a bouncer. He has the power to keep him out,
The FNAF World Snowman.
and is already standing
We're gonna talk about
outside.
that.
The important part we need to discuss here is Junior.
Sure is.
Because it establishes that later the night Charlotte died, Fredbear's has been closed. The path between Junior's and the driver's house is the same as the path between Fredbear's and the Crying Child's.
Ah. Oh. Yeah. Interesting.
If Afton is the driver, that makes Junior's the new building occupying what used to be Fredbear's. Junior's was Fredbear's, closed down and turned into a bar. FNAF 2 establishes that Fredbear's was the first location.
We're gonna try to contact the original restaurant owner. I think the name of the place was Fredbear's Family Diner or something like that.
This means that Charlotte died at Freddy's and not Fredbear's, like in the books, which can be backed up by Freddy being the animatronic serving cake in FNAF 2 and not Fredbear.
True.
But it also means that if Fredbear's is closed, the bite has already happened. The Crying Child was bitten at Fredbear's, and Fredbear's is closed by the time Charlotte died. Meaning
Oh.
The Crying Child has to be bitten first.
And
Okay. I need like more graphics. So we have Fredbear's, which has bite. And then Freddy's.
thus, the tragedy of the Afton family begins with Cece's trauma surrounding the animatronics. It has never been directly stated why exactly he fears them, though it should be noted that he seems to only fear the robots and not the characters themselves.
Right, since he has the toys.
After all, the plush animals are his friends, especially his Fredbear plush, which talks to and comforts him.
Sure does.
He's here, he's there, he's everywhere. Who are you gonna call? Psychic friend Fredbear.
It's all
Yep.
but confirmed that
That's good.
Fredbear has his father's voice, as we see a similar Fredbear plush with a walkie-talkie in Afton's headed bunker.
Yep.
And his final words to CC, "Let me put you back together," mirror what Michael says his father requested he do with Elizabeth.
I assume we're gonna go straight to sister location from here because, yeah, we'll see.
I put her back together, just like you asked me to.
Also note that the walkie-talkie near a Fredbear plush in the sister location secret room implies that the
Trying to think, do we ever have proof that Crying Child is a boy? Yes, we do. I'm an idiot. Ignore me.
bunker was active and in use during 1983, whatever the hell that means.
Why William is using a bear to communicate with him and not just talking to his kids directly is still a mystery for the ages.
'Cause he's a master manipulator
And it still doesn't explain the question we just
and a psychopath.
brought up. Why is CC afraid of the animatronics?
Right.
Originally, the hint given to the
Right,
fan
it
base
was seen in the
what is
shadows.
seen in the shadows is easily misunderstood in the mind of a child.
And then we
And
see the
many
room with
interpreted this as
the
him
head
seeing
thing.
someone getting into a Freddy's costume and becoming terrified of what that can mean. I believe we have a different answer, one that was given in the game, either intentionally or not.
Okay.
In Night 4's minigame, we see that someone, presumably Michael, though it's never stated, has a locked crying child in a room filled with robot parts.
Yep.
This alone could cause a child trauma,
Yeah.
surrounded by disconnected limbs, staring eyes, and torn wires. However, special attention should be given to the Fredbear suit.
Because we've
Its
always
head is
stipulated
gone,
that
and
it's
something is sticking out of its
hair
neck.
in there.
While those could very well be 8-bit wires, I don't think so. We don't see any wires connecting the head to the body when Purple Guy puts the suit on the guy in the background. Instead, to me, these sprites resemble brunette human hair. It's too blurry to tell for sure, but that brings up a question. Is the crying child locked in a regular parts and service room or inside Fredbear's secret back room?
Oh.
Even if this knight isn't in a back room, we know that CC has a tendency to get locked places, most likely by Michael, though we can't rule out that it's by William himself. Members of the Afton family would most likely know where the back rooms were,
True.
and the back rooms were where the employees were told to go in order to bleed out and die. If the crying child was locked in there, only to witness someone enter in a suit, start twitching and bleeding out, and then die in front of him, yeah, that would sure traumatize.
So we're assuming it's an adult. Okay. I'm not sure I agree with he was already in the room and then an adult came in and bled to death. I'd say it was more likely they were already in there. Like, Michael just shoved him in there, not knowing. And the guy was bleeding out or dead already. Because otherwise then, like, yes, we assume... Because we assume that Michael... I mean, he would either shove him in there and then stand outside and laugh, or he would shove them in there and then leave. And if he left, then I guess, like, no one would see, like, a guy bleeding to death in a suit walk up to this door and go into this room to die. But in that case, then the door would be open for crying child to leave. Because then otherwise you're stipulating that. And then the guy locked the door from the inside and crying child couldn't reach it or didn't know how locks work. Like, that's adding a lot of layers to it. I would say Occam's razor, it's more likely that guy was already in there, Michael shoved crying child in, locked the door, crying child watched this guy die. That makes more sense to me.
The kid, perhaps in a way he couldn't explain to others. After all, you're, what, 4 to 8 years old? How do you first of all put together what happened in front of you and then verbalize such a thing?
No wonder he's sobbing all the time.
We also know from FNAF
Dude, the graphic novels are rough. Give me the creeps.
3 that the Springlock suits were decommissioned following multiple simultaneous failures.
Which we've never talked about. Because I guess you could... Well... I've always, like, in my head pictured that as multiple suits pretty much at the same time. I guess it would make more... Again, talking about what makes more sense. It would make more sense to meaning multiple spring locks inside a suit. Yeah, I guess.
Learning of an unfortunate incident at the sister location involving multiple and simultaneous spring lock failures.
We do not see them in action following the bite of 83, save for the obvious MCI, but even then, the phone
Missing children's incident.
guy refers to it as a yellow suit from the back rooms at that point, meaning it's not in casual usage. In the third game, he names it as Spring Bonnie, but says specifically that it's not meant to be used, implying that the FNAF 3 phone calls happened during or immediately following
Yeah, it says, like, someone used the
the
suit.
bite. The crying child's death is only one Springlock failure, not multiple simultaneous. If it's the last time they're used, what happened before? Perhaps if, in a week or two prior to the bite, someone got spring-locked and bled out, it's not exactly simultaneous, but it's close enough that they might have counted it as similar incidents, and multiple instances in a short period of time would be concerning enough to shut down the suits entirely.
Okay, so they're also seeing it as differentiating multiple suits here. Well, now I'm changing my mind. Now I kind of think it's just multiple spring locks in a suit.
Speaking of the bite of 83, we should probably get to that. Still terrified
we?
of the animatronics and potentially having nightmares of them coming to kill him, we'll get to that.
Yup.
CC now hates going to Fredbear's and seeing the robots, preferring to cry under the table rather than face them. This is unfortunate for him as it's a family business and he's there a lot.
Yeah.
In the week leading up to his birthday party, set at Fredbear's, he's barely able to function, shown in at least one incident collapsing on the ground and having a breakdown when faced with an animatronic suit. It should also be noted that during this time, neither Cece nor any of the other children appear to be going to school. This could place Cece's birthday and the bite at some time in the summer, or during an autumn or spring break.
I mean,
As we'll discuss later, the missing child incident, or at least the end of it, is stated to
I think that's neither here nor there. Like, lots of parties happen on the weekend, man.
happen on June 26th, although the year is unspecified. This is something we should keep in mind when we get there.
Okay.
Michael, as a teenage older brother going through his angsty phase, is not at all sympathetic to his brother's plights. Instead, he prefers to aggressively bully him, mainly via jump scares while wearing a Foxy mask, and
Foxy
presumably
bro.
locking him into rooms so he doesn't have to deal with him. We also know that at one point he literally goes home without the crying child, leaving him at the place he hates the most. Cece doesn't seem very popular outside of his family either. While we see a few kids neutral towards him, asking him to play or simply talking to him, others are antagonistic immediately.
It's at this
Supposed
point
to say
I
bro
want to
cries
talk
all the
about
time.
William's actions. Quick trigger warning for discussion of child abuse for the next 2 minutes.
Cool.
But right now we've got
This is your warning. There's a
William supposedly communicating through
there's a thing. So skip ahead a few minutes then.
the Fredbear plush rather than actually, parenting his kids.
Yeah.
While I can't speak on whether this was intentional at this point in the timeline, William is, at least through inaction, encouraging infighting among his sons. He doesn't seem to punish Michael for abandoning his brother, locking him in rooms, and scaring him to tears. The plush's words aren't even comforting. It's just, oh, your brother's coming. Did your brother do something again? Get jump scared, it builds character. The reason I bring this up is that now we're going to talk about common abuse tactics. Fun! When an abuser has multiple victims, it's a very common tactic to turn them against
Fucking Avatar. Fucking Ozai. Anyway.
each other. This is because simply, if the victims are fighting against each other, they don't have the time or energy to fight the actual problem, which is, of course, the abuser themselves. This can be seen in either forcing the victims to compete for affection and good treatment, convincing
Stranger
each
Things,
party
yep.
that the others are the enemy, all that jazz. And once again, it may not be intentional. Not every abuser goes around saying, I think today I'm gonna gaslight my wife. But when an abuser has control, and they want to keep it, they will do whatever it takes. Whether or not William was an abusive father prior to the bite of 83 is unknown, but it is something we should consider. Presuming he is the driver in Midnight Motorist, we know he later falls into abusive tactics, implying physical abuse, at the very least verbal.
Yeah.
He does nothing to comfort Cece, and does nothing to solve the root of the issue, which is
Oops. That's also... We're saying that's... I mean, we know that's the night he kills Charlie. So he's already killing children. There's no reason to think that
Michael's behavior, which
he's
could
not
also
equally
easily
as
be read
miserable
a cry
around
for
his own
help.
kids.
Many abused children, not understanding why they feel the way they do, take out their anger and frustration on others.
Michael
because they
bullying.
can't or won't do
Yeah.
so to their abusers. Michael's actions could be a dumb teenager phase, or mirroring actions that have been done to him.
Yep.
It should also be noted that if William was abusive prior to the bite of 83, this does not exclude him from loving his children, or at least thinking he does.
Yep.
As hard as it is to understand, many abusers do believe that they love their victims. They do not or cannot process the fact that their actions are causing their victims
I was just
pain,
gonna say
and that their
possessions.
love is a desperate desire for control. That they see their victims as possessions rather than people. And with William's major control freak issues, this would be an easy trap for him to fall into, even without trying. And trigger warning.
Whatever the reason, Michael's bullying escalates until Cece's actual birthday party. With several of his other friends, all in Freddy's themed masks, the tweens surround the crying boy and decide to prank him by pushing him to give Fredbear a kiss. Cece is screaming and begging for them not to, but we see them cross the entire restaurant.
See, also, something that I've always thought about these minigames is there are multiples of Spring Bonnie and Fredbear. Because they are here, and then we walked past them.
Carrying him over to
To the
and then
stage.
shoving him in the mouth. And then the mouth bites down.
Unless... Hold on. That's forward, back. Yeah, no, because they're not...
Screaming
They're
and
standing
begging
in
for
the
them not to,
same
but we see
position,
them cross
though, I
the
guess.
entire restaurant, carrying him
Yeah,
over
I'd,
to the
I'd say
stage
that's
and then
another
shoving him
set.
in the mouth. And then the mouth bites down.
God, the silence is such a good touch.
We see the bullies stop, staring in shock and horror, and the crying child stops moving.
Sure does.
This is the infamous Bite of 83, the date known due to an
Not 87, Markiplier.
advertisement for Freddy and Friends on
He couldn't
CC's
have known.
television, and the code to see the FNAF 4 cameras in sister location. And it is what kills the crying child. But not immediately.
Yep.
We know from the final cutscene that CC does not die right away. He slips into a coma where we hear Michael tearfully apologizing just out of his field of vision, while Fredbear/William promises to put him back together, before we hear a flatline. So at some point, Cece was in a coma at a hospital, hence the flatlining. This can also be seen in Easter eggs during the FNAF 4 gameplay. On occasion, the bedside table will have a pill bottle, flowers, or just be replaced with an IV drip, implying that the gameplay is the nightmares that the child is having in his coma before he succumbs to his wounds.
Right.
Possible. There are other interpretations we will get to later.
Ooh.
The real question is, how...
I was gonna say, that's one of the few things everyone pretty much agrees on, is that FNAF 4 is the crying child as he dies having, like, nightmares and shit. I'm interested to see what else they think.
How long did this
I'm okay
take?
with it.
And more importantly, what happened?
Because, I mean, it is in... If you're viewing Help Wanted as a video game in universe, which is what it says it is, then having those would be weird. That they are mini games inside the video game, you know?
And between the bite and the death. Well, the missing children incident.
Oh? Oh, that's creepy. Oh, that was creepy.
The missing child incident forms the foundation of practically everything in Five Nights at Freddy's. It was canon even in the first game, where Cawthon wasn't even planning a story, let alone a decade-long lore-heavy franchise. Yet, much like many things in FNAF, information on it is scarce.
First of all, the books give the year it occurs as 1985. However, in The Truth About the MCI, Bon Swooch makes a very good argument for the game incident occurring in 1983 instead, which would put it very close to the bite. The movie seems to put the incident in 87, but that may just be setting up date weirdness. Nevertheless, we have no canon year, only vaguely 80s. We do have a specific day and month, though.
The first game tells us the story through rare, hard-to-spot newspaper clippings, which confirm the incident occurred at Freddy's and that there were 5 missing children. And it's confirmed by this point that after they were lured away, the killer stuffed their bodies into the animatronic suits. However, something that is not brought up enough is what else the newspapers tell us, specifically the first one.
A fucking doll. We always thought it was Ella. Is that the thing in the new game? This thing? The thing he was going to put
the killer stuffed their bodies into the
Cassidy?
animatronic suits. However, something that is not brought up enough is what else the newspapers tell us, specifically the first one.
Kids vanish at local pizzeria. Bodies not found. 2 local children were reportedly lured into a back room during the late hours of operation at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza on the night of June 26th, while video surveillance identified the man responsible and led to his capture the following morning.
Surveillance is spelled wrong. Drastically. But isn't that... Is that the date we saw from the FNAF 4 thing earlier? When it's like, that's your birthday, you have to be there? Did they say a date?
The children themselves were never
I'm
found
making that up.
and are presumed dead. Police think that the suspect dressed as a company mascot to earn the children's trust.
3 things here that people don't bring up enough. 1, the end of the incident at the least occurred on a specific date, June 26th.
Right.
2, the final 2 MCI were killed together.
Yep.
And 3, we know they're the last 2 because someone was identified and arrested the following morning.
Not necessarily convincing, though, because we find out somewhere, like, no charges were filed. Right? So it could have just been a mislead. And then more kids get killed.
The next newspaper then says that following this arrest, 5 children were eventually linked to the incident, and they have confirmation that a man dressed in a mascot costume to lure them to a back room. The newspaper also says that the man was charged and convicted.
Oh yeah.
Specifically, the headline
genuinely
says,
don't remember
5
this.
children now reported missing. Suspect convicted.
We know that then Freddy's remained open for several years after, only to close when no buyers wanted to be associated with it.
Fair.
The last newspaper specifically refers to the MCI as the tragedy that took place there many years ago. We also know for a fact that Afton was the murderer. However, the question of whether he was the one arrested and convicted is a big one.
Right.
Because the answer to that has to be a no.
Right.
He was active in the company by 1987 at the least, and still the manager and robot designer for the fun times. Feel like a convicted child murderer would get axed pretty quickly in the company. So someone was caught on camera, arrested, and convicted. But not William. We'll get to who we think it was in a moment.
As for the children themselves, we know the name.
Phone guy. It's gonna be phone guy. Wonder if it's phone guy. Or the guy that disappears before phone guy.
Names of 4 of the 5 children who disappeared.
Gabriel, Fritz. It's been a while. Gabriel, Fritz, Susie. I can't remember.
This specifically here are the 3rd and 6th games.
Caught him out of practice.
In the 3rd game, the bad ending shows 5 animatronic heads positioned specifically, each with one glowing eye.
Except for
of presumably Fredbear, who has 2.
Yeah.
Upon completion of Pizzeria Simulator's Lorekeeper ending, we are given a shot of a graveyard on a sunny hill.
Jeremy. I don't know how I forgot the one name that comes up in like every single game we have.
Eerily similar way to the heads in the above shot, with the 5th obscured by grass, and the 6th high up on the hill above them. The names that can be seen are Gabriel, Fritz, Susie, and Jeremy. 2 of them were identified as missing children in the 4th closet, which released the following June. Ironically, June 26th. Gabriel's name was confirmed in the later graphic novel adaptation. With additional information that Susie is Chica, which we'll get to in a minute, we can very easily place the tombstones along the heads and confirm that Gabriel possessed Freddy, Fritz possessed Foxy, Susie possessed Chica, and Jeremy possessed Bonnie. The 6th grave up on the hill is presumed to be Charlotte Emily's, as the blurry name seems to match in length and shape, and it matches her puppet characterization.
And there's other graves in the background. Because then if you looked, it'd be like it'd be the wrong side of the tree, but it'd be a similar angle. Because it'd be tree grave.
Emily's, as the blurry name seems to match in length and shape, and it matches her puppet characterization of watching over the other children in death.
Right.
The other 2 missing children in the book series are a girl with long dark hair named Cassidy, and a young artsy boy named Michael Brooks.
Fucking who? I know Cassidy, obviously. Golden Freddy.
What's
I'm gonna
important
need
to
a
note
refresher.
there is that neither of them are named Jeremy. As Michael Brooks is confirmed as the novel's possessor of Golden Freddy, it seems likely that Cassidy replaced Jeremy as Bonnie's possessor in that universe. It should also be acknowledged that the writers of the novels, Cawthon and Breed Risley, would have known that the books take place in an alternate universe to the games by this point.
Right.
Cawthon was, of course, in charge of the franchise, and apparently decided to write in Charlie as the puppet around then. I feel like these graves were part of the confirmation that they take place in separate universes, as if the 5th obscured grave was supposed to be Michael Brooks, that leaves out Cassidy, and if the 5th obscured grave is Cassidy, it leaves out Michael. It would have been very easy for Jeremy's grave to read Cassidy, but I really feel that adding in a different kid was a specific nudge that the novel MCI are different from the game's MCI. Just keep in mind going forward that while having 3 of the same missing children per universe pretty much gives us confirmation that the above picture is meant to represent those kids, the novels can't be used as a factual basis for all MCI information.
We don't know a lot about the missing boys, but we actually have a lot of information on Susie. For
Fruity
instance,
Maze.
in Ultimate Custom Night, a glitching withered Chica will claim
I was the first.
I have seen everything.
This combined with her gravestone being first.
The voice lines in Ultimate Custom Night are like one of the best things in this franchise. They're so fun, and a lot of them are informative.
In Help Wanted 2 seems to imply that she was the first of the missing children.
That's
Then
the
we
Fruity Maze
actually
music.
see her
Yep.
abduction earlier in Pizzeria Simulator. The game Fruity Maze, when it lights up, shows the reflection of a young blonde girl in a purple dress,
Also, I still like the theory that Mangle was the spirit of the dog that gets hit here. But that's just me.
excitedly playing the game. As she continues playing, though, more fruit is replaced with the sprite of a dead dog, and music starts being replaced by the sound effects of a car collision, as her reflection gets more upset. When the third game is completed or lost, we see Spring Bonnie hovering behind her, and the text,
He's not really dead.
He is over
He
here.
is over here. Follow me.
Yep.
With this, a story emerges. Susie's dog had previously been hit by a car and killed, and William used this information to lure her to the back room where she became hit by a car and killed, and William used this information
Got some Amontillado in the cellar over here. Literature jokes.
to lure her to the back room where she became his first victim. We have similar cross-continuity confirmation that this is Susie via the Fourth Closet graphic novel, where she is depicted as looking exactly the same.
Yeah.
In the original book as well, she mentions that Bonnie helped her find her puppy, so this is as confirmed as it gets that it's Susie.
Yep.
Susie also gets characterization in the Fazbear Fright series, though interestingly in that she is given a completely different physical appearance, with long brown hair and brown eyes, a completely different outfit, and no mention of a dog. Though the game Susie descriptor matches up quite a bit with the doll she and her sister share, Gretchen. That is pretty weird, though from interviews with the co-authors we can gather that a lot of the contradictions to canon were based on a lack of information given to them.
Checks
In
out.
the Fazbear Frights universe, Susie is still a missing child, and specifically the one connected to Chica, so we can consider this another cross-continuity confirmation. Susie is the only universal constant, apparently. Following Susie would have come the other children, and only recently have we been given a definitive order.
Help Wanted 2.
In Help Wanted 2, when the player reaches the end of Princess Quest 4, they encounter the graves of all the children of the happiest day. Only by lighting them in the puzzle's correct order can
the secret Bonnie
mask
mask is like the real.
This parallels the original Princess Quest games, in which you have to do the same thing in order to release Glitch Trap.
Yeah,
but the
but now we
developers
have
of Help Wanted 2
heads.
specifically chose to put the missing children's puppets
Yeah.
here, identifying these graves as theirs. This really, really implies that the grave order is the death order. And with Susie as the first, that gives us an order. Chica Susie, Foxy Fritz, Freddy Gabriel, Bonnie Jeremy, Golden Freddy, and Puppet Charlie. This surprised the fanbase a lot.
Yeah.
Because most of us had assumed that Charlotte had died before the missing children.
Yeah.
Henry refers to William's kills as a wound first inflicted on me. And in the novel trilogy, Charlie dies 2 years before the MCI. But it looks like we were wrong the whole time. Or maybe it got retconned, who knows?
Yeah.
Or maybe the puppet was always meant to be after the MCI, and the only retcon was that it was the game universe's Charlie. The latter would make sense, as Henry's kid's death in the novels is described completely differently, with the toddler being kidnapped from a linen closet by Spring Bonnie, rather than stabbed outside by a non-disguised William Afton. Sammy may not have ever been meant to be the puppet, just some random other dead kid. Charlie dying last also explains why the children are already dead for Give Gifts Give Life, when she arrives to give them the masks, and why she stuck around in the first place, which will be discussed more in a later section.
Fair.
But I'm sure you all noticed something interesting. When naming off kids for the gravestones, Connie didn't name Golden Freddy, did she?
Nope.
And many of you will be saying, but we have a name.
Cassidy.
Let's take a look at the security logbook.
Oh boy.
Released
Oh god.
just a few
Oh Christ. This fucking survival logbook is like the bane of all our existences.
weeks after Pizzeria Simulator, the Five Nights at Freddy's security survival logbook is mostly a little
I'm only
puzzle
half an
collection,
hour in.
but holds some very important lore
Oh
information.
boy.
Firstly, it practically confirms
I
that
still
Michael
want this
Afton
book.
is the same character as Mike Schmidt, the first game's security guard. He writes his name as Mike in the logbook, meaning he's a security guard named Mike, but he references enough specific sister location stuff to make it clear it's Michael Afton, namely the Immortal and the Restless, Exotic Butters, and Casual Bongos.
Exotic
the second
Butters.
thing it confirms is a certain name. Throughout the book, there are two spirits that seem to be communicating with each other, one through faded text, scribbling notes in the margins of the pages, and another by altering the pre-existing text into their responses. We will call these spirits Faded and Altered for now. The thing is, we know for a fact that Altered is the crying child. Faded frequently asks if they recognize drawings of the crying child's toys and references his party specifically. Altered's responses, namely the party was for me, line up with the questions and show that the second spirit is indeed our CC. As to who Faded is, well, on several pages Faded wrote the phrase, "my name." One of these is specifically on a gravestone, and with the book's close release to FNAF 6, it was immediately supposed that this was revealing the name on the 5th gravestone. On each of the My Name pages, the page's numbers, or other numbers should the page number be obscured, are incorrect. Upon collecting all of them and going to the word search, the numbers can be used as coordinates to locate letters, which spell out, very clearly, Cassidy.
Is why. So, that comes up with the name...
Thanks, Taco.
Cassidy. Cassidy. So, the hidden code of this book is a name, and its name is Cassidy. Remember that, guys.
Yes, sir.
Other phrases hidden in the word search, which are not supposed to be there, are "it's me," "who
Yep.
are you," and "what is your name?"
Very quickly, a conclusion was drawn by the entire fan base, that being that Cassidy is the name of the fifth missing child, and the one stuffed into Golden Freddy.
Because It's Me is associated with
But
Golden
in
Freddy.
talking to the crying child, we also have more information on them that changes everything about this kid. One of the specific things that Crying Child says is, "I can't see," which brought to attention in the Fazbear Frights books, though those released 2 years later, but I digress. Within these books, there's a continuing story at the end of each novel referred to as the Stitch Wraith Stingers, in which a possessed
I know where they're going with this. The possessed animatronic has 2 spirits in it, as we assume that Golden Freddy does as well. And the 2 spirits in the Stitch Wraith, one is in control and one is just like in the background and can't see.
animatronic is causing destruction wherever it goes. This is meant to tie together multiple fright stories, but the important thing to the Cassidy interpretation is the Stitch Wraith itself. Within the Stitch Wraith are 2 children's souls, Jake and Andrew. While Jake died
Andrew's
of a
in
brain
control,
tumor, Andrew is a vengeful victim of William Afton. He is very specifically the vengeful spirit of the Frights universe, made explicit in the Manor Room 1280, where he is keeping Afton in an eternal nightmare despite attempts to either revive
I really want to
or
read that
kill
story.
him, solely to make him suffer. This, of course, brings to mind the vengeful spirit of Ultimate Custom Night, who will be discussed in more detail in the Ultimate Custom Night section. But we know the vengeful spirit is a victim of Afton, keeping him in an eternal torment. Now, it's not Andrew in the games.
Crap.
While I know this is controversial in the fanbase, it's pretty clear that several Fright stories take place in an alternate universe, and the Stitch Wraith Stingers are some of them. Namely, just because of 2 little things. Into the Pit and the Man in Room 1280. Into the Pit establishes that the MCI victims were never missing.
Yeah, there were 6 of them, and they were laid out, and there was screaming. It was a whole thing.
But found pretty easily. While you might think Oswald seeing the kids all propped up with party hats was just for dramatic effect, it's confirmed in the final story Year of the Band that this was intended to be the actual way the kids were found. In the games, rather famously, the missing children are missing, their bodies never located. Certainly not in such a gruesome scene. Meanwhile, the man in room 1280 is dying from burns. Of course, Scrap Trap was in the FNAF 6 fire, but he was long dead by that point. William Afton died of a spring lock failure in a hidden back room, and then he was long dead by that point.
Also missing an arm. Got it. I know these are huge, but size a little smaller.
William Afton died of a spring lock failure in a hidden back room in the 90s, and then was trapped there without food or water for potentially decades. The fire isn't what killed him.
Yeah.
He would already be dead by the time the fire got to him. Ultimate Custom Night in the games is hell rather than the Nightmare of Frights. Right, sorry, Cassidy. So, Having these two specific souls in one spirit causing problems on accident across the series has several parallels to Fated and Altered's conversations in the book. Specifically CC's I can't see, as specifically Andrew cannot see while Jake can. Meanwhile, Andrew is more in control of the endoskeleton's power supply. If, say, there were two spirits in Fredbear, then CC could be the one who couldn't see but was more in control of the suit, and that line could point directly to that interpretation. Though it should be mentioned that they have these specific movesets because Jake possesses the Wraith's mask and Andrew the battery, and I'm not sure how that would work if two kids were both possessing the same entire body, but well, anyway.
One could be possessing the endoskeleton and one could be possessing the fabric. Ow, something just like flew into my eyeball.
The fifth missing kid is definitely in Golden Freddy. We see this in Give Gifts, Give Life and Happiest Day. But if CC is in there too, they'd have to be stuck together. Thus it would work like Andrew and Jake's possession of the Stitch Wraith, with a difficulty maintaining control between it.
Hence the two colored eyes in the FNAF 3 ending.
Then we also explain why Fredbear is so glitchy and mysterious. There's two confused souls in one body. And why he's got two glowing eyes in FNAF 3. There's two souls in there instead of just one.
And with Andrew as the vengeful spirit interpretation, this also points to Cassidy being the vengeful spirit of the games' universe. If CC is Jake, then Cassidy is the Andrew parallel, and, well, UCN is very specific Golden Freddy imagery, mainly in the final cutscene unlocked after completing 50/20 mode.
Which you know everyone can do.
Where a non-withered Golden Freddy can be seen twitching in a black void, interpreted by the fanbase to show the vengeful spirit as inside Fredbear.
Leave the demon to his
Fredbear
demons.
is what Afton sees when he faces the one he shouldn't have killed. That would make Cassidy the vengeful spirit, angry on behalf of her fellow victims as well as herself. She is the one holding Afton in hell, and possibly the one who has to go back to stop the Mimic in the second arc, though that's very debatable. The Princess and Princess quest was labeled in the files as Cassidy, but this was later changed after being noticed. With other important file names being kept, such as Charlie Door, this seems to imply that it was never supposed to be viewed or wasn't meant to be a clue. Or, well, it's possible the Princess represents Cassie, but that's a whole different ballgame. The thing is, well, this all brings up a certain question. Why Cassidy? Why is she the one William shouldn't have killed?
'Cause, like, he shouldn't have killed anyone, just in a general sense. So obviously the title isn't referring to morality, but to the fact that this victim was one who was inevitably going to come back and kick his ass. And not to sound like Mystic Hippo here, but what makes Cassidy so special? Some people infer from the Toy Chica cutscenes of UCN that her death was the last and therefore the most brutal, as Toy Chica's last kill is stated to be worse than the other.
Don't remember the pig part.
But that honestly doesn't make sense to me. The more violent a kill, the more vengeful you are? Is that the logic we're working with? It's not exactly how it works.
True, she could just be a more...
What was that?
Logic we're working with? It's not exactly how it works.
Okay, also for those interested, there's no good way to correlate Chica's attacks with the child murders. 7 overall, which is fair. Because, very importantly, she starts... Oh, talking about the, this fucking weird cutscene. She starts with Foxy's hook. I have a crack in my screen right here, so it's hard to read. Hold on, if I do... Meaning. Aha. Meaning with the murder, that's similar, typo. Close enough to the Susie murder is 3rd overall. Which you know from that same game, Susie was the 1st, right? Not only that, but while that one is close to the Susie method, other methods such as saying her house is on fire makes no sense for getting one of the kids to the back room. True. Because this entire weird cutscene is, I met a guy, I can't stop thinking about him, I know we're meant to be together, I'm gonna tell him some excuse to get him into my house, and then, you know, I'll have him. I'll say that Susie's murder was against the Twisted Wolf instead. They replaced Cheek in the novel, so that one's fair. 2 were taken at the same time. Yep. Puppet is targeted. God, the anime puppet is creepy. Come over if they don't breaking. Oh. Tell them to come over, and then if they don't, breaking into his house. Correlates in no way to how Charlie was murdered, which wasn't premeditated and it was outside in the rain. Yep. Final one is when they use kidnapping with a bag and a shovel. Firstly, it's with the fucking pig patch. Again, the majority of these, I think I probably haven't seen it just because it's the last one, which means like fucking like 15 mode or some shit. Majority of those can't be linked with in any good continuous way with the murders. If anything, pig patch being the 7th and being meant to be kidnapped and probably possibly lied to about who did it. And with the eye color, if you were making an argument, that murder would fit Elizabeth way more, to be honest. Especially with her getting shoved somewhere. Okay, I didn't quite follow all of that, because that was a lot. Also, Pigpatch has 2 colored eyes, doesn't he?
True, she could just be a more justice-oriented child than the others, but even then, what purpose does this serve narratively? Why is random kid number 5 the big good who gets to hold Afton in a torture chamber?
The missing kids, as you can infer by the fact they barely have names, are more plot devices than characters in their own right. Which is fine. Sometimes in writing you just gotta focus more on other stuff than characters whose purpose is to be there and die. But then why is the 5th one so important? So important that she's the one stopping our big bad. So important that she gets to haunt alongside Cece and communicate with him in the logbook.
And that's where we get to the big question.
The one that Corey asked me the night I did my own read-through of the security logbook. One that changed everything.
Oh boy.
Is the logbook telling us that Cassidy is communicating with the crying child?
Or
that
she
Cassidy
is the crying child? Oh, let's see what part 3 is called.
Newsflash, asshole!
That seems like I've been Cassidy the entire goddamn time.
Cassidy.
The entire goddamn time!
That sounds like a perfect place to, perfect cliffhanger. I'm super on board so far. This is super well done. I can see why everyone was obsessed with it when it came out last year. Can't wait to find out. Their evidence for Cassidy is the crying child. That would be something. But yeah, I'm gonna call it there. Mostly because this is already an hour long. I'm only 40 minutes into the video. The new FNAF game comes out tomorrow. I don't know if I'll have my hands on it. But I will do my darndest. But people already have the videos up today because they got the game early, like Dawko and John, and I'm sure G2 Live probably got it. But yeah, this has been fun. It's fun to get back into it. It's all coming back to me, slowly but surely. But yeah, that's it for now. I will see you next time. Have a good night, y'all. Bye.